This is Becoming Undone.
Most of my focus was on how good I was at baseball. And so going off of an injury, as soon as it happens, just everything going through my brain is like, who's going to care about me now? Like, what's like the next step? I won't be able to walk for 6 weeks at the bare minimum. And just kind of wondering if I'd ever get back to where I was. Going through the recovery process made me realize that I'm worth more than just who I am on the field. But like, people care about my character, and that should never go into question of, if I can't play sports, am I still a good person? My name is Taye Brooks, and I am UnDone.
Hey friend, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to yet another episode of Becoming Undone, the podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. I'm Toby Brooks, a speaker, author, and professor. I spent much of the last 2 decades working as an athletic trainer and a strength coach in the professional, collegiate, and high school sports settings. And over the years, I've grown more and more fascinated with what sets high achievers apart, and how failures that can be devastating in the moment can end up being exactly what we needed to propel us along our paths to success. Each week on Becoming Undone, I invite new guests to examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. I'd like to emphasize this show is entirely separate from my role as a professor, but it's my attempt to apply what I've learned and what I'm learning about the mindsets of high achievers. This episode marks a new milestone for me. Before there was Becoming Undone, there was Better Every Week with Brendan and Toby Brooks. It was a well-intentioned effort to meet every week with my daughter, then a freshman at the University of Oklahoma, and me, her faculty dad at Texas Tech. We made it through 4 whole episodes that to this very day I hold near and dear. But as the pressures of college got bigger and bigger and time got smaller and smaller, we kind of fizzled out. We had plans for more, but we never got around to them. Like so many podcasts, our show died. However, I knew I still wanted a show of my own. So I launched this one on New Year's Day, 2023. Since then, this will be 103 episodes, with 4 of them being repurposed versions of those 4 episodes Bryn and I created. Even though our idea died, I wanted the episodes to live on. So that brings me to this episode. Now, 4 years later, my youngest Taye is a freshman himself at Lubbock Christian University. I knew I wanted to be able to record a conversation with him for the show, and selfishly, I just wanted to hear what he had to say. So I asked. Taye has been involved in sports his whole life until now. He started coach pitch Little League at the age of 4, and he's played basketball, football, was a thrower on the track team in middle school, but baseball was always his thing. Away from the court, the field, or the diamond, he always loved math. And he's a drummer too, so the academics and arts have always been part of the equation too. Besides that, the other thing he's done most consistently is, well, go to the doctor. All jokes aside, there was a compound tib fracture at the trampoline park that required surgery. Broken fingers that wouldn't heal. An ankle fracture that he fought through, I thought it was a sprain, his freshman year, that was so obscure, it's now been written up and published in a medical journal. Or the fractured index finger on his throwing hand that threatened his entire senior season. I'm actually in the process of writing that one up for publication too, as there have been no documented cases of index finger fractures in the throwing hand of pitchers anywhere in the literature. So if you're counting, my guy will have 2 documented medical case studies on him before the age of 20. He also had a mystery illness that left him nauseated and unable to rest for nearly a year and a half. He had a months-long workup, and we considered everything from a gallbladder condition to lupus to a neurologic condition. It kept him from eating because every time he'd eat, he'd get sick to his stomach. So even though he was training as best he couldn't put on weight. Point is, Taye has been through way more than you probably would have guessed. He's usually quiet and reserved. He doesn't usually complain. I watched a doctor try to re-break a misaligned pinky finger 5 times with an x-ray afterwards each time to check to see if it was aligned properly. Taye didn't so much as make a sound through the entire process. He didn't shed a tear. He just took it. I think he was all of about 13 at the time. So when high school came and I felt like he wasn't really getting a fair shot, we were torn. Let him stay and fight and possibly get overlooked, or take him somewhere else and hope that he could start fresh. I'd known Chris Softly, the AD and head football coach at Lubbock Christian, from afar for a few years. I knew he had a program that would pour into Taye, and that he'd be given a chance not only to succeed, but to grow, and to do it while participating in pretty much everything. His school at the time was a Texas 5A public. He had about 500 other students in his freshman class. The school we were considering was a TAPS private school, where he'd have closer to 30 or 40 in his class. My wife and I agonized over the idea. We didn't want him to think that we'd given up on him. We knew he could be successful if he could just get and stay healthy, and if he were given a fair chance. We talked it over. We toured the campus. Ultimately, at least as I recall it, we left him to decide. He decided to give Lubbock Christian a shot. The Lubbock Christian representative we met on our tour, Deborah Hawley, assigned her son, Ben, to be Taye's friend on day one. They're now roommates in college. Taye started out in the spring semester of his sophomore year and played baseball right away. Although he started pretty strong, I saw his confidence start to wane as the season drew on. He ended up playing mostly outfield and pretty sparingly at that as a sophomore. His junior year, he got a new coach, and he connected with him right away. Coach Jordan Terry was wonderful for Lubbock Christian and an incredible mentor for my son. Taye ended up playing a key role in a team that finished 2 wins away from a state championship. I could reflect back on countless examples of how Lubbock Christian in general and specific people poured into him, but none made a deeper impact on me than a text exchange I had with Coach Chris Softly. Taye was frustrated by his illness, and he felt that he was letting his coaches and his teammates down. I was afraid that people that didn't know him as well as I did would think he was trying to be lazy. I called Coach Softly and left a voicemail. I updated him on the doctor's visits, tried to reassure him that Taye was doing all he could. Now, I've worked with football coaches for the better part of 20 years, but none of that prepared me for what I got via text. Let me read it to you, as I still have it on my phone to this day. On June 23rd, 2022, Coach Softly writes, quote, "Received your voicemail. Tell Taye no worries whatsoever. His health is of utmost concern, and if he needs to miss a couple weeks to get clear answers and be able to solve issues, then it's totally worth it. Let us know how we can help, but we are sorry for him that it has taken so long. I know he must be frustrated. It will all be a thing of the past soon." And here's the part that got me. What I told him is we want him on our team. And if he's not ready to go day one, then so be it. When he is ready, we want him with us. End quote. Now keep in mind, my son is a baseball player. He'll tell you that. He hadn't played football since 8th grade, but he had played injured for a season of baseball. And he had felt like at a 5A school, he'd kind of fallen through the cracks. But Coach Softly took a different approach. They did finally start to get better. And that team went 12-1 and defeated the defending TAPS Division IV champion on the way to Lubbock Christian's state championship in football. My son got to be a part of a school and a team and a culture that without a doubt changed his life. As I reflect back, I realize lots of things that he learned. He learned how to play through pain, but he knew that already. He learned how to come back after disappointing defeat, but he already knew that too. What he learned most was what he was all about and where to place his identity. And I dare say that wouldn't have happened, not like it did anyway, anywhere else. Even today, as a college freshman, he still goes to an alumni Bible study the Softly family host in their home. He's different. I hope you'll enjoy my conversation with my all-time favorite dude on the planet, Taye Brooks, in episode 103, King of the World. This week, I know one person in particular that's pretty excited to hear this episode. Taye Brooks is my son, and I know his mama can't wait to hear this one. Taye, thanks for joining me from Lubbock Christian University.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this has been a long time coming. I did 4 episodes with your sister in a podcast during her freshman year, and I've repurposed them and managed to use them in this show, but I've never interviewed her for this show. So you're the first Brooks child who has been on Becoming Undone. So I'm looking forward to digging into your story. So I always start with a little bit of a softball question. What did you want to be growing up and why?
So I was kind of all over the place, from as far as I can remember, like very youngest, I set my sights high. I wanted to be the king of the world. But as I got a little older, I started thinking, maybe not the king of the world, but I do kind of want to make a difference in people's lives. So that kind of changed into like a lawyer or something involving law and like the justice system. But going into high school and as I'm maturing more, I see that I have skills in math. So I think probably like financial planning or something along that realm.
Yeah. Well, I know you've always been a math guy, and we, as parents, we wrote you guys birthday letters every year. And one thing that was consistent in your birthday letters was you were always great at math and you always loved baseball from like the age of 2 on. So I always have my guests tell a little bit about their story. Obviously, I know your story, but for my guests and for me, I want to hear you tell it. Start at the beginning, wherever that is for you.
Let's see. So I don't super remember everything about growing up. I'm kind of foggy on the details, but we moved from Illinois pretty young. So all of my memories have been in Lubbock, where we've lived for 13 years?
14 and a half.
14?
Yeah.
14 and a half. Wow. Yeah. So, I guess just growing up, I just remember us hanging out, like me, you, Mama, and Brennan. And that was great. You guys were always very loving, and like kind of looking around, I saw all the dysfunction in the world and, kind of saw home as like an escape from that. I feel like you guys were always very stable and did a very good job of instilling values in us that helped us grow into the people that we are. And I love baseball in particular, but I played other sports, football and basketball, but I wasn't really ever super into those. However, I did end up playing football, but it was always kind of baseball oriented. That was kind of my biggest thing between that. And as far as school goes, like math, I was always a pretty high achiever. I wanted to do well. And so that kind of became my identity as well. So whenever things wouldn't bounce my way, whether I would not play great or do poorly on a test that I didn't study for, I took that very hard. And so I guess just like as far as growing up and finding where I belong in my identity, I'd say that was probably one of my biggest challenges, was knowing that I'm more than just a scorer. I'm more than just a player in like a sport, but I have a higher purpose.
Right. Well, you've been no stranger to injury. And the funny part is never injured in football, but injured in just about everything else, from
what?
I don't know, from youth group Frisbee to all kinds of different things. I'll never forget. I worked with injured athletes my whole life, and obviously your own kid's different. But I think it was like the last time or the next to last time that you really injured your ankle, and you had suffered with multiple ankle injuries and ultimately needed surgery on that. But I'll never forget just the brokenness in your eyes that this had happened again. You were going to start the school year on crutches again. and some of your athletic dreams were really kind of in question at that point. So talk me through what you learned through the adversity of injury.
Yeah. So that's definitely a big thing. Like I said, most of my focus was on how good I was at baseball. And so going off of an injury, as soon as it happens, just everything going through my brain is like, who's going to care about me now? Like what's like the next step? I won't be able to walk for 6 weeks at the bare minimum. and just kind of wondering if I'd ever get back to where I was. And so that was a big focus. But going through the recovery process, at the beginning, people were like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? Like, checking in on me. And that kind of got more sparse with people I wasn't super close to, you know, like people I played with, but the genuine people in my lives, like my family and close friends, still reached out, you know, is there anything I can do to help? And then it made me realize that I'm worth more than just who I am on the field, but like people care about my character, and that should never go into question of if I can't play sports, am I still a good person?
Yeah.
And so I think that was hard at first for me to see, but even recovering from that injury, I was thinking like maybe that baseball and just like sports in general could start becoming an idol for me. Like I'm putting more focus on that than my relationships in my life, you know, like people I care about. I don't really talk about anything other than just the surface level stuff. And so it kind of made me sink deeper and talk about things that are more than just high school sports, I guess.
Right. Well, I know baseball's always been a big part of what you do. And you're right. That can easily become an idol. What were your biggest dreams as an athlete?
I think at some point I kind of said I wanted to, you know, play in the MLB. That's every kid's dream, I guess. But like being realistic, I wanted to play in college, and, you know, kind of going through, particularly in my junior year, as I'm improving and getting better, I wanted to be able to play at the next level. And like, I guess that would be like my dream, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I know part of your story for me, and I wrestled with it a ton. And I think in hindsight, I look back and I'm confident that we made the right decision, and I'm thankful that you did too. But let's talk about transferring. You were a freshman. You were injured at a big 5A Texas high school. I think there were 90 plus kids that tried out for the freshman baseball team, something like that. And then you get injured, and you're kind of hobbled through that entire freshman season. And so we start having the conversation, like, if you want to pursue baseball, maybe we need to go somewhere else. Talk to me about the thoughts and emotions that were going through your mind late in that freshman year, early in that sophomore year, when we really started thinking about maybe going to a different school.
Yeah. So I would agree with the large pool of players there are at the bigger schools. It's kind of like if you can't provide to the team, then you don't really have as much value as someone else. So resources aren't going to be as invested as a player. So I think part of me was sad moving schools, like leaving all my friends. And I enjoyed the challenge of like, I'm not guaranteed to be able to play this year. So I think that kind of pushed me to want to improve as a player. And transferring, I was kind of worried about the competitive spirit, like the competitive aspect that it would be. But I think it was a lot better than I expected it to be. All my coaches after transferring, they were great. I would say without a doubt, they're wanting us to improve as not only players, but as human beings, like, was absolutely crucial. And it was really good to see, because it wasn't just like go in the weight room because you're going to be able to hit a ball further or throw it harder. But it was, you know, you want to do hard things, because by repeatedly doing hard things, you get stronger and tougher as a person. And that definitely transferred over. And I'd say that was like the biggest moment in me realizing that I need to put my focus on Christ rather than as just a baseball player. And I think that really pushed me to want to become better, you know, giving my all, not just for myself, but for the people around me and the God above.
Sure. Now, I think things like that are easy to see in retrospect, but when you're on the front side of that, you don't know that. You don't know what your coaches are going to be like. You don't know what your teammates are going to be like. You're doing your best to make an informed decision, but it's still a risk. So what would you tell someone else who's thinking about transferring from a public school to go somewhere else?
I would say as much as you think you're going to miss out on, like how much is going to be different, it's not going to be that different. And I think embracing change is good. I was mostly worried about finding people that I was close to, but since it's a smaller school, like I went from almost 500 at the time in my graduating class to less than 40, but I so easily found my friends and my people. And I think those relationships have been closer than anyone else. And so I would say if you're scared, then that's okay. But I would recommend it. I think it's good for your growth and your development to be in a new environment where you're not comfortable.
Right. Well, another big change came midway through your progression as an athlete when you got word that you were getting a new coach. And so, you know, growing up, you didn't play a lot of travel ball, a little bit towards the end, but mostly rec ball, and not a lot of consistency from year to year in your coaches. And then you get a new head coach who's there for your junior and senior year. What was that transition like for you?
I think, you know, it was kind of a really good parallel to transferring schools, going from everything that I knew to something completely different. I think kind of the fear of how we would do and like how close I would be to the coach was a big deal for me because I didn't want to go back. You know, he was a public school coach. And so I was kind of worried in that sense that he would kind of act the same and that he wouldn't really deeply care about us, but absolutely exceeded all of my expectations. I loved having him there with us. The relationship that I have with him was closer than any of my other coaches. I feel like I can come to him about anything. It's not just like baseball related, but just seeing him fit in really easily, like over the summer, like instantly we could all get along with him. Like all the players could talk to him and relate to him on like a deep level, just really excited me for the coming season. And through that, I think he's a great leader and he led us well, not just in baseball, but as men. Like I think we all grew a lot.
Yeah. Coach Jordan Terry, if you're listening, shout out to you, the entire coaching staff there, just tremendous. And it's only natural that an athlete gravitates towards the people that they do. You're not going to love every coach every day. And I think even your coaches would admit that about their coaches. But Coach Terry was tremendous. In that first season, you guys end up going to the Final Four, make it to state, and fall just short. Kind of run into a buzzsaw. Kid that's, you know, still making his way in professional baseball now as a pitcher. What was the disappointment of falling just short of a state championship like?
I'd say like it was really hard. That whole first night, you know, going back from that, we stayed the night there in Arlington and watched the girls play because the softball team had won their game, so they played in the championship. And so just kind of seeing them play, it hurt for sure. Me and some of our buddies, and Coach Terry was there as well, because we all rode up there like baseball and softball together. But I think it was me and Brady. We rode back on the bus. It was the two of us and Coach Terry and then all the girls. And so just seeing them excited about their success, like part of us wanted to be excited for them, but it just hurt. You know, just a knife in the heart every time they talk about us losing. And they obviously, it's high school kids. They're gonna joke about it. But it definitely hurt for sure. Yeah.
Well, you use that to motivate you in the off season, and you're also battling through mystery illnesses. And I mean, it was a tough time because part of you wants to put your nose to the grindstone and work and get back there and do it all over again. And that wasn't exactly the experience that you got to have. But you come back for a senior year and highly decorated. You end up being awarded all district, then eventually all state. And during that time, I remember the conversations, and I'm trying my best not to be the sports dad that's like, man, if you don't play college baseball, you got no place in my home. And I could tell you were wavering, like, do I want to play college baseball? Do I want to pursue college for other reasons, academics? And I knew in your heart that at one point you had big dreams, but it seemed like as your identity in Christ grew, your identity in sport became, and this will sound negative, it's not intended to be at all. It became less of a focus. And so the thought of just going to any old tiny college to play college baseball really wasn't appealing to you. So talk me through that thought process and how you navigated that senior year and ultimately decided to hang up your cleats.
Yeah, so that was definitely a hard decision. I had a lot of time spent thinking about that. But I think ultimately, like, the dilemma was, am I willing to sacrifice my time and how much I'll be able to work in order to pursue these dreams of playing? And I just I prayed about it for a very long time. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I think it's more important to me to be able to see my friends and have that time to work and make money and focus on my future. Because whether I played baseball or not, eventually there would be an end point. And so I guess like dictating my end point was easier for me because I could look into the future and see where I want to be 5 years from now. I don't want to have that hurt of not playing baseball all over again and, look into the workforce. But I guess it was just more important to me go through it once and I guess deal with that now rather than pushing it down the road.
Yeah. A lot of wisdom there. You're smarter than your old man. Part of me is still like, maybe I could play somewhere, but you're so much healthier about it. And I know that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt at times. And that doesn't mean that it probably isn't something you might have second guessed yourself on from time to time, but there's a maturity about the way you pursued it. And I remember thinking the same thing about backs, like high school, everybody's All-American, all-state in multiple sports, state championship in football. And he had opportunities to play, in particular, college football. And I remember thinking, like, why wouldn't he play college sports? But he chose to walk. I mean, it's kind of hard to top that experience to go somewhere and maybe sit the bench for 3 years and maybe get to play as a senior. There's something to be said about taking charge and leaving on your own terms and still loving the game, as opposed to it being something you have to do and something that, like you said, keeps you from other aspects of life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that senior year didn't exactly go as scripted, end up falling just short of going back to state by the same team that beat you the year before. How would you describe that end of your career?
I think that was, honestly to me, that was so much harder than losing in the Final Four. We had a lot of great pieces, and just going through that whole week and even the week before, we don't want to circle games, but, kind of looking forward, we're more than likely going to have to play them again. And we had beaten them in district, we swept them, and we felt really good about our chances. In that preparation, that was the hardest I've seen any of our guys work. And so going to that game, we had a lot of confidence, but we also knew this could be our last. And there were moments in that game, we get up a little bit, we're feeling good, and then they get a couple runs on us, and then it just brings me back to the previous year. They have a lot of experience winning, and we fought to the end, but ultimately we fell short. And I think it hurt less that, it was a team effort. We had that community in that it wasn't just one person that we can throw the blame on. And I think it was the same as junior year. It was we all could have done a little bit better, locate certain pitches a little better, hit the ball a little further. And they're just little things like that. So even in that failure, just rallying together as a team, as brothers, I think really helped alleviate that a little bit. But just kind of that feeling of deja vu and just knowing that it was going to be my last, just that definitely hurt.
Yeah. Well, it was an illustrious ride. You won a state championship. It wasn't very long after you got there when band wins state, and then football wins state, and football plays for state. And so you've got lots of decorations and proof of a program, and that Lubbock Christian program recognized with a Henderson Cup, which is the best overall program. What would you say has been the most powerful or meaningful specific message that a coach or a teacher shared with you, and why?
That's a good question. I'd say, so during our football season, we had a lot of talks with Coach Softly. And there was one thing that we always preached on our Wednesdays. We'd always do a gospel presentation. One person would get up and share the gospel. And you have the situation is you're in an elevator with someone. You have 30 seconds to a minute. And that's the only interaction you're ever going to have with them. Like, what are you going to say? And so, like, going through those, and we kind of talked about it in real talk of like what you should include and what you should leave out. And I think just kind of, it's not necessarily something he said specifically, but Coach Softly, he lives as a Christian should. He's been such a great role model for me. And so I guess just seeing him live out the gospel, if you only have 30 seconds with him, you'll be able to tell. And I think just wanting to carry that in my life and just putting all my words super succinctly above what I would say and the person I want to be.
Yeah.
That was big. But as far as like a saying that would go along with it is like, keep chopping wood. Is like, the work is never done. Like, there's always going to be more to do. So just take it one step at a time. Little things become big things.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt in my mind. You're a different human than we dropped off. And growth happens. You know, you're 14 years old when we dropped you off, and you graduated as a 17-year-old. Obviously, you're going to grow and mature. But what I loved about your time there is you grew spiritually, no doubt. You grew physically. The thing that I notice about Lubbock Christian teams is they look different. They're more athletic. They've trained how to be athletic. And if you look at a Lubbock Christian alum 5 years later, they still exercise. They stay fit. They stay active because that was enculturated. And I see that within you. You know, you learned how to train. You learned that you can see results from training. Like, the mirror don't lie. And you saw the results of those efforts you were putting in. But it was more than just physical. It was about more than winning trophies and bringing home state championships. And so I'm forever thankful for that entire coaching and teaching staff, just everybody there that poured into you. You mentioned that we visited a church on Sunday, and there was a young man, he was in college, getting baptized. And the person he chose to baptize him was the guy who happened to be sitting in his row when he visited that church for the first time. And he struck up a conversation with him, and over time ends up leading the young man to the Lord and baptizing him. And I thought, how many times have I sat down and not said a word? And just the thought that you got 30 seconds or a minute, make that impact. That's incredible. Well, what are you up to today? Baseball's done. You're a high school graduate. What do your Monday through Fridays look like these days?
Well, it's definitely been a lot less busy than it has been. I've been cleaning pools the past couple months, so still finding that work school balance has been tough, but I'm still working the one job, so I'll probably be around 20 to 25 hours a week is kind of what I'm planning on. Mostly weekends is when I'm working the most, but I'll have classes every day, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll get out a little earlier, so I'll have time trying to go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, stay as active as I can. And other than that, just kind of spending time to grow relationships with my friends. There's always stuff to do around campus, or even if there's not, we can find something. We've been doing a Bible study. We've been pretty bad about it, but beginning of school, we were trying to meet just about every day, except for Wednesdays and Sundays, just so we can stay together, grow closer as friends, build that bond. But, playing intramurals, that was fun. We just finished our season there, just trying to figure out how to play sports without being hyper competitive. And that doesn't really go over super well with me. So that's been the struggle so far. But
well, now you see why I play basketball alone. I call it my witness protection plan. It's so that I can not argue and get into fights with people. I just play on a court all by myself. Baseball's harder to do that, though. I don't. Well, what would you say for Taye Brooks remains undone?
I'd say just as far as the future, I'm still kind of looking forward and just seeing where I can go from the high school part of me where I'm around people all the time. The younger people that I know, they kind of see me as wise owl. I'm always asked for questions regarding, like schoolwork or whatever. So
Thatcher Chris, shout out.
Yeah. So I guess just seeing where I'll be in the next 5 years, like where my career is going to go as far as that.
Awesome. Well, you don't have to have it all figured out. You're still a freshman, so plenty of time, but appreciate the vision. How can listeners connect with you? Follow what you're doing. I know you guys have a pretty fantastic Instagram.
We do.
Instagram for your intramural team.
Sigma Tech is the name of our intramural team, and we just kind of do a lot of fun stuff like that. And I don't really post too much on Instagram. That like occasionally I'll think about something that'll be kind of fun that we'll do. But I mean, other than that, like you can find me at church Wednesdays and Sundays. Yes.
At any of a litany of Church of Christ congregations in West Texas.
True.
And the Baptists listening all deflate. It's all good. No, I'm so proud of you, son. I can't tell you how proud I am of you, and it's been just the honor of a lifetime to see you and your sister both just figure out what you love to do and pursue it with all your heart, and not be heartbroken when that season's over. That identity piece, I didn't have to worry about that with you. And again, the idiot sports dad that we see portrayed in all these places, like, my boy's going to play college ball, he's going to the league, all that garbage. Like, there's a seed of that makes me think, if you don't want to do that, maybe you don't care about it enough. And then I get that check in my spirit that says, Taye's the one that has that figured out. You're the one that got the priorities out of order. So I'm thankful you taught me.
And I think a lot of that is attributed to how I've been raised. I don't think that all just came from me or what I've been told by coaches, but you know, you and Mama both have always preached that we should love ourselves and don't do something that you don't think is in line with your identity. Just because you fail doesn't mean that you're a failure.
Right.
But there's always a lesson to learn.
For sure.
And whenever something ends, I guess.
Yep. Well, on that note, shout out to Christy Brooks, who passed her licensure exam today to become a counselor after all these years of raising kids and being a minister. She's putting herself back to work as a counselor. She'll be a great one. Well, son, it has been a pleasure. I know you're busy and you've probably got somewhere else to go. Last little bit, I always stitch this in. Just introduce yourself. Say, my name's Taye Brooks and I am undone.
My name is Taye Brooks and I am undone.
Awesome. I'm thankful to Taye for dropping in, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I nearly always ask a question of my guests about what song they'd play as the background for the montage of their life, but I forgot. So I texted Taye, who said, My Promised Land by Josiah Queen. For more info on today's episode, be sure to check it out on the web. Simply go to undonepodcast.com/EP103 to see the notes, links, and images related to today's guest, Taye Brooks. 2 things to encourage you to connect this week. First, The UnDone, a new community on Facebook for like-minded high achievers. We've gone from 0 to 80 members in just 3 days. I'm pretty stoked about that. My goal is for us to get to at least 1,000 by the end of the year. So be sure to check it out and join. Share. Tell your friends. I'd love for you to become a part of a group of people that can help you on your growth journey. Go to facebook.com/groups/The UnDone and get involved. In other news, I'd love for you to join The UnDone in your inbox too. Each Sunday, I'll send you encouragement, inspiration, and maybe even a challenge for the week ahead. Go to undonepodcast.ck.page and sign up. It's totally free, and it's the best way to stay connected to the growing movement that is The UnDone. Coming up on the show, finalizing details to hear the inspiring story of surgeon, entrepreneur, and influencer Dr. Brittany Bankhead. Also trying to nail down my friend and entrepreneur Kevin Clapp. So stay tuned. This and more coming up on Becoming Undone. Becoming Undone is a Nitro Hype creative production written and produced by me, Toby Brooks. Tell a friend about the show and follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Becoming Undone Pod. And follow me at Toby J. Brooks on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out my link tree at linktr.ee/Toby J. Brooks. Listen, subscribe, and leave me a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Those reviews help, so I would love it if you would log in and get it done. I'll see you back here next Thursday. Till next time, my friend, keep getting better.